EP98. I'm catching up with these episodes now. So while I'm doing this in the barn on Saturday morning at home, episode 97 is being uploaded to YouTube. So getting there slowly, and they are taking me ages, so I do apologise. I get about an hour and a half every evening to edit these videos. So last week, a little bit of progress. I must admit, I was really pleased to finish off the last of those advert panels. That was that little bit and the range strip, so that's back in. Oh, sorry, Brian will tell me, a guide for adverts, so sorry, Brian. So anyway, this week I do need to continue with the back of the bus. I'd also like to do that rear registration plate. I've got to put the little letters on the back of the plate. If you've not seen a previous episode I did maybe about 6 or 7 months ago of how I did the front registration plate, this might prove interesting. If you wonder how the letters get on there, I'll show you how this weekend. Fingers and toes crossed. So yeah, so there's quite a bit of work to do on the back of the bus. I really do want to get that into primer. And then maybe next week, if the weather is really good, the following weekend, might put some green on the back of the bus and we can start putting all the panels back. So that's my plan of action. As usual, none of it will ever happen. In this little next bit, I'll tell you what I actually did and what I didn't do. Well, at least I did get the letters on that registration plate. So I got that done. That's at the end of this video if you want to stick around for it, or skip forward to the end or whatever you do. I did manage to do a little bit of woodwork. I need to make those little wooden bars for the bottom part frame of the bus before I put all the panels back on. Before I do that, though, in a future episode, I'm going to have to spray the chassis silver. But I had a look in the pot of paint, and the pot of paint's got issues, so I have to order up some new paint to replace that. Also, my very good friend Alan Brown popped in with some panels for me that he's very kindly rolled for the back of the bus. Great to see Alan. And in addition to that, I gave him another project to be getting on with, so poor old Alan, he's probably going to be avoiding me now. So anyway, right, let's kick off with this week's update. Right, let's kick off with this then. There's a little bit of wood missing from the very bottom of the RT. Just above the dog rail there should be a strip of wood which sits at the bottom of the skirt panel, and it provides the bottom of the skirt panel with a little bit of rigidity. Now, a friend of mine who's restoring a bus locally told me that that little bit of wood should actually be one continuous piece that goes through, like in this case, two bays. And I'd ordered up the wood previously via my brother, who very kindly managed to order all the wood up from somewhere in Norfolk, and we couriered it down via Wesley, who was very kindly brought it down from Norfolk to where we are in Essex. And so I got all that wood, got it all sorted out. Then this bombshell was, really, they shouldn't be separate pieces of wood, Dean. They should be one continuous piece. So Mark very kindly popped off to this wood mill for me and picked up some wood that I'd ordered. And here it is on the side of the RT waiting to get done. So that's going to be this week's project, to get this out the way. Now, I'm not entirely sure, because I've looked at the diagram for the RT, and it's not entirely clear whether they were separate panels. Now, I know I said in the last edition of this that obviously, you know, when panels get bashed, that bit is going to be quite vulnerable, so it's going to have to be replaced. And I had assumed that as a result of panels getting knocked about, they'd replaced them on a piecemeal basis. But the diagram, this diagram seems to show them as two pieces, although it's not entirely clear. But it doesn't matter. The main point is that by having them in one continuous length, we'll give them a lot more rigidity. And less joins, obviously, in the wood. So we might as well do it in one piece anyway. So on the front of the bus, on the side of the bus, near side, there should be two sections. So one from the front wheel up to the fuel filler, and another one from the fuel filler to the rear wheel arch. Now, the rear wheel arch is a problem. We'll come to that in a minute. So we can't really progress with that, but we can progress with both that first section and the one on the other side of the bus But I can't do much with the one on the other side of the bus until I get that wiring in place. But nonetheless, you know, we can get on with making the wood up so it is ready to go back on the bus. Right, it is this rather unusual shape, as shown in the insert. So what I'm going to do is get the planer out and then try and plane it down. Now, I'm no expert with this kind of thing. I know Tom, who's doing an RT, and my brother will probably have a good laugh at me for doing it with a planer. Probably saying, why don't you saw it down? It's much easier. So I ended up with wood chippings all over the floor of the workshop. But anyway, I'm always happy when I get to finish these things. There is the final product in bare wood. Now I've got to get the pot of paint out, and you know I love painting things. So first thing to do is put a coat of this wood primer on it, because obviously it's at the bottom of the bus and it's going to be exposed to the elements. And then once I've got it all nicely painted in grey, then put some chassis black paint on it as well. Right, so having done that, I've now got at least one that can go back on the bus, but unfortunately the other two, that's the one around the other side on the offside, and the one that's just before the rear near side wheel, I need to do those wheel arches, and what I've done is I've put a little bit of extra bit on the end of these bits of wood so that once I've done the wheel arches, I'll then offer these up, and then I'll make all the relevant cuts and what have you into this wood. So yeah, I can put one back on, but the rest unfortunately is going to get stuck at the back of the shed and then pulled out when they're ready. So all I've got to do now is let them dry. So there we are. Right, so that's that little job done, out the way, stuck at the back of the shed, and we can now move on to the next wee project. Right, I couldn't have made the next bit any better, could I? This is the wheel arch on the near side, and you might look at that and go, well, it looks all right. But it isn't. There's a little bracket just there, which is pretty much completely rotted, and I'm going to need to take that off, and the wood that was in it is also rotted. So my brother very kindly, I sent him the one on the offside, and it's a little bit too complicated for me to attempt. I can attempt most things, but it was a little bit hard for me, because what I had to do was send him the one on the offside, because they're handed, so you've got a near side and an offside. So my brother very kindly, using whatever mathematics he did, managed to reverse the drawings or the sample that I sent him to then make it a near side one. So that's done. However, it needs to fit into this bracket. Now, just at the bottom here is the original metal mud flap. So I need to get that off, and I want to do some work on that, paint strip it and get that painted up, which is what I did for the one on the offside. And I want to get that bracket off so that we can decide what we're going to do with it. Right, so the first thing I did was to remove the that mud flap thing, which you can see just laying on the floor there to a left of shot. You also notice I've got this whacking great big hole in the floor. You might remember I found that the metal structure that holds the floor in had rotted out, so that's away being remanufactured. Yeah, so it's all a bit of a, I don't know, lots of little bitty jobs, unfortunately. Now, the wheel arches on RTs were very vulnerable to rot. I've got rot in various degrees on both sides of the bus. The offside, strangely, wasn't as bad, but it still had rot in it and it needed the wood replacing and what have you. The near side, the structure, which you may have seen in previous episodes, is actually really pretty good, and I didn't have to remove that much wood. I probably, I don't know, lower part, I suppose about 60% of the wood, but on the offside it was 100% of the wood. It all had to come out because it was all completely rotted. So yeah, it's a bit of a potpourri this. So anyway, right, so what I now need to do is I need to get this bracket removed so we can have a decent look at it. Now, it's typical with this, they're held in by wood screws, which I don't know, it's probably worked all right in the day, but the trouble is the wood screws, they get wet, they turn to nails, and not one of them is going to come out without putting up a fight. So the only thing I can do is to put this pry bar in, and gently as I possibly can with a pry bar, actually remove this bracket, and it didn't do too bad when it came out, frankly. Right, so this is a view of it on the bus, and that little channel there, you can see there's a bolt across the top. There's a nut and bolt at one point. That used to hold some wood in place, but as you notice, all of it's gone. It's left completely. It's screwed into that little, there's two pieces of wood just above there. I may have to replace part of that one that's to the left of shot. That's the one that appears to be supporting this, and that has started to show signs of deterioration, so I might have to work out how to do that one. But anyway, there it is, and this is what it looks like when it's off the bus. Right, I'd arranged to get hold of one of these brackets from someone else who's doing some bus restoration. He's letting a few bits go, and I contacted him and said, "You got one of those brackets?" He said, "Yes, I have." And I went up to his place, picked it up, brought it back. Didn't really think a great deal about it, but there's a little problem. There's always a problem with this stuff, isn't there? It's not handed, that's not the problem. The ones that are on the main beams that go down, you see around the first, second and third bays and what they are all sort of like a slimline version of this. So I picked up one of the wrong ones, unfortunately, and in good faith, it's just one of those things, isn't it? Unfortunately, I perhaps should have made myself clearer what I actually wanted. So anyway, nonetheless, my good friend Alan Brown made an appearance to drop off some metal for me, and poor old Alan got lumbered with this as a project. So just in shot are two of the panels that Alan made for me. These are the ones that go round the corner from the back to the offside. They need to be remade because the other ones had too many dents in them, and they're easier to take them off and get rid of them. Whereas you well know, the ones around the back of the bus on the roof is a much harder task. So these were much easier to do. So anyway, Alan has very kindly, because he's very skilled with these things, very kindly agreed to make these for me. So yeah, great guy Alan. He did an RCL many years ago. He's done many buses, but he bought an RCL, one of the ones that had been converted to Red Bus and ran at Edmonton. And when he bought it, unfortunately, it had been sent to Barnsley, to the Barnsley scrapyards, and it had been smacked by a bulldozer front and back. So there was a lot of damage done to it, but I haven't got any pictures of it, unfortunately, so sorry about that. But Alan did a really great restoration job on it, and it's still around to this day. It's a great testament to Alan's abilities to fix things. Right, if you saw my earlier shot, you would have noticed this laying upon the floor. This was that mud flap that was part of the rear inner wheel arch. Notice that on the outside, actually ignore the brown, that's not brown paint, that's rust. But anyway, you notice that underneath the silver paint, it's black. And that's what I've tried to do with the offside. So the chassis is silver. I'll come to that in a minute. And it seems that the inner wheel arches were black. So I suppose you can understand that, really. So I'm going to do this in black. I'm going to remove all the paint from this. I'm then going to deal with rust. And then I'm going to build the paint layers back up again to quite a heavy black chassis black gloss. So that's my plan of action with this. But I've got to take as much of the loose paint off as I can with the orbital DA thingy. And then I'm going to have to pop some paint stripper on it. Right, so once there's a decent layer of paint stripper on it, I'm going to do absolutely bugger all with it this weekend. I'll stick this at the back of the shed. That woodwork, by the way, I'll just point out, that took me most of Saturday. I know I managed to gloss over it in about 8 minutes on this, but it took me most of Saturday to do that. So this is a Sunday job. So having put the paint strip on it, what I'd like to do is just get the paint stripper on it, stick it away somewhere, let the paint stripper do its stuff, and then hopefully I'll come back to it this next weekend, and that should have all well lifted. So that's my plan. But anyway, plans, as you know, never work out with this RT. Right, so we're making quite a bit of good progress with the back of the bus, but there is a couple of things that we need still to do. One of which is to refit that lamp cluster to the back and then rewire that up. That's a job for another day. And then there's this, which forms part of the lamp cluster, and this is the registration plate. Now, the one in shot with all the letters on it, obviously that's the original one, and I do want to keep that as well. I've kept the front registration plate for my little collection of things, and I'm going to keep this one too. But it did mean that I had to acquire another one, and it was all unfortunately a bit broken up, so it had to be repaired. So anyway, now is time has come to start to put the letters onto this plate that I've made up. Right, so what I'm doing here is I'm making up a mix of varnish and white spirit at roughly 50% mix. I've also got my little paint strainer there because lumps do seem to turn up. It's old varnish that I'm using. It's some ICI varnish, which is probably in the region of about 30 years old, but it is a really nice paint. Remember, I've said this before, and I'm sorry if I bang on about it, but old paints and varnishes and stuff like that was so good in the past. Now we've just made everything a bit sort of generally rubbishy. Right, so our friends, the Austins at Squirrel Preservation, supplied me with the 6 transfers that you see on the desk. What they are is they are a sort of a paper backing with a, I suppose you could say it's printed or painted or whatever, lettering that goes onto each one. Unfortunately, in this shot, it's not really very clear. Perhaps I should have done another camera angle, but I thought this was probably going to be the one that's going to work out best, but it didn't. So anyway, you have to bear with me when I have to put the varnish on the outside of this. I did, you might remember from donks back when I did the front plate, I had a bit of an epiphany about the distance between that L and the Y. So what I did was I trimmed down one of the transfers. Sorry, Brian. I trimmed down one of the transfers just so that we can actually try and get the L and the Y a little bit closer and make them a little bit more balanced. So anyway, you'll be pleased to know that on this one I did a little bit of dialogue. So yeah, let's enjoy. Right, I think that's quite well mixed now. Let's do the first one. Let's make a start with this. The idea is not to go too far over the edge of the transfer. This one's actually quite easy to see what I'm doing, but I've got to get the whole of the letter, as it were, covered. Not helped partly by the fact that the varnish is almost as transparent as water, so you can't actually see where you are unless you look at it really carefully. I brought in an extra light just over the back there just to help me a little bit, because the workshop lights they're good, but they create shadows. So let's have a look. We've got that all around there. There you go. That's the first one done-ish. Might just give it a little bit of a spread it out a little bit more. So like I said in the earlier bit, you've got to let this go to a point where it's tacky. At the moment, it will just, if you put it on, the thing will just slide off the panel. So yeah, there we are. I don't know if you can see that. But that, looking at that in the light, I think I've missed a couple of bits around here. So let's tidy them up. I imagine at Aldnam, this would have been done in seconds probably. You know, they would have been really quick with it. Whereas with me, I'm a bit of a novice really. I haven't done a huge number of these. The last one I did was the registration plate on the front, and that didn't come out too bad, to be honest with you. I was a bit worried about it. But yeah, I mean, the worst comes to worse and it goes wrong, and you end up having to sort of paint strip the panel back down and make a start again. But I've done quite a bit on that panel, so quite a bit of work, because that panel, when it started off life, was in 3 bits, a bit like this one here that you can see to my other side. And what happened was that for some reason they just snap here. So this one was just as bad, so I had to remake it, the ends there. So that's done. I've got to get there's a little reflector that goes there. Brian Watkinson's going to supply the reflectors, I hope, and we'll get that done. The other thing about the 8s, very easy to put the 8s upside down, and when I put them here, they are actually upside down. So yeah, that's a silly little thing to do. It doesn't matter anyway. I haven't put them on the panel yet. It's only silly, I suppose, when you put them on the panel. Right, let's get on with this. Right, and sometime later, about 6 hours, I'd been going around checking. I put the little bits of paper around the back of the shed, and I kept checking them quite frequently to make sure that they were at a point where I could actually use them. And then I put the kettle on and went under coffee with the lads over the other side. When I come back, they'd pretty much dried off a bit too much. But anyway, what I've done here, you might notice I've got masking tape all around the edge of the actual plate itself. And the purpose of that is I put little marks on it, and I'm using that ruler just to line it up with the marks. Like again, I know I mentioned Aldenham. The guy would have just done it by eye. I'm sure he wouldn't have used anything like I've done, but I've measured out all the letters on the original plate and their position, and what I'm just simply doing is I was going back round again and just trying to copy it as absolutely accurately as possible. I know people would say, oh, it doesn't matter, because unless you've got the two side by side, you're not going to notice any differences. But I didn't want it to come out looking wrong. And obviously the people that did this were absolute experts at their art, and they were able to put this in by eye. I would really, really struggle just trying to guess where it is without some kind of assistance. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. And now the point is they are very slightly tacky. So while I'm positioning them, I'm trying to keep them just so that they are just slightly off, because the paper itself had kind of got a little bit of a twist in it, so it just sort of held them off a bit, but they were just starting to grab the paint a little bit. So my plan here is just to position them all up and then press heavily on each of the letters as they go down. There we are. So it's quite simple. It just takes quite a bit of patience to do it. Right, so this is the bit we've all been waiting for. All that apprehension. Will it or won't it work? What I have to do is I've got to sort of drizzle some water over the paper. Now that 0 was going to prove to be a bit of a problem, unfortunately, because the backing paper was a lot more solid than the others. The others, as you can see, they're absorbing the water really nicely. So what I'm doing is just doing a final press down to make sure they're not going to go with the backing paper, because the last thing you want is the transfer to move off with the backing paper. So the idea here is, by making the backing paper as wet as possible, the backing paper should, in theory, just like that, slide off the letter. So there we go, LY, and with any luck we'll get the R off. There you go. So the O is going to pose a problem. It is a completely different manufacturer, I think, of that. It's also very slightly, if you look at it, when eventually I do manage to get it off, because look, it's going to play up. It's slightly creamier in colour, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I might sort of somehow try and varnish the remaining letters with some of that varnish, to try and just drop the white off of it a bit, so it matches with the 0. But that 0 is really, and you can see, look, it's going to pose me problems. I've got this on fast forward, but I'm actually spending a lot longer. I think this is going about 3 times real speed. So I've spent a lot longer just trying not to lose the transfer, but that transfer is clinging on to the back of that paper, and it's certainly, the paper itself is not absorbing the water like I hoped it was going to do. I didn't have this problem with the front plate, funnily enough. The backing paper absorbed it really nicely. But anyway, after quite a bit of work, very carefully picked, it's like taking a plaster off, isn't it? See what I mean about that, the shade on that 0. There you go. Let's get the excess water off, and there's our finished product. There you go. How about that? Right, so on that very positive point. Let's have a quick flashback to what the back of the bus looks like. Oh dear. This is what greets me on a Saturday morning at 6 o'clock when I get to the barn. And I think, what have I let myself in for? But anyway, when we do things like that registration plate and we do the other bits and pieces, they start to look really nice. And I can't wait to put them back on the bus. Although I can't put them back on the bus yet until I've sprayed around that emergency exit window and I've done those corner panels. And I put the rubber on the on that little edge, and I've found out what I'm going to do with the handle. Oh God, the list is endless. But anyway, thank you very much for sticking around and watching these. Hopefully this one has been a little bit interesting, and I look forward, as always, to putting the next one together, and the next one will be the very first weekend of October. It is starting to get noticeably colder up at the barn, as well as being pitch black when I arrive in the morning, and it's getting quite dark as well when I start to go home. So anyway, winter's on its way, and I really do want to get the outside of the bus back on so I can turn the inside into a nice little cosy working area so I can make a start on the interior. So there we are. Look forward to doing the next one and seeing you in the next episode. Cheers. Bye.